Hey everyone, it's Tiffany here and Beatrice. We're here for our second session of our introductory week. We are together and we're talking about boundaries and what we want and what we don't want. Also, I want to apologize because it's dark here in Colorado, here in the US. My screen, I'm appearing darker here in this lighting. It's already like almost 7 o'clock in the evening. Just had a really busy day. So the next few recordings with me will hopefully be better opportune lighting. And anyway, with that, let's get started. So the goals for this session are as follows. We want to understand the difference between rigid, relaxed, and healthy boundaries. We want to connect with our personal needs, and we want to start up getting motivated to apply our own boundaries.
That's right. And as you might remember from last time, we do grounding exercises at the start of every session. We do a check-in. Grounding exercises are a set of strategies that help us when pain or difficult memories become overwhelming. They're designed as techniques to stay present when we feel ourselves dissociating or as though we're outside of our own bodies. If at any point you feel uncomfortable during this video or anywhere, you can use one of those grounding exercises to cut off those hard emotions. They work as their own boundary in a way between the present and the past. If you can, please join. So today's first grounding exercise will be a visualization technique. So let's start sitting up straight on your chair and close your eyes if you're comfortable. No? Otherwise, look down. Imagine you're standing in sand. Ahead of you is the sea. Behind you, a forest. The sun is shining, but there's a lovely wind flowing. You are safe. Right next to your feet, you will see a wooden stick from the forest. Pick it up and draw a line in front or ahead of your feet. Now there's you, then the line, then the sea. The sea tide comes and goes, but does not cross your line. Now slowly come back to your senses. First in your feet, then your legs, all the way up in your body. You will be working on drawing this line, these boundaries to choose in real life. The sea may at times come closer to it and attempt to erase that line. So you will need to keep this internal idea of where it stands, but it will not fade completely. It lives on in our minds. So in situations where you feel yourself dissociating or panicking, draw that line in your mind and hold against the sea. Even if your boundary is not as firm as you want it to be, or it's faded, it's still there. Picture it. So remember, every one of us is different. So a grounding exercise that works for someone may not work for you. That's totally fine, and we'll be doing a different exercise each week. So we can find the ones that work best for us. If you don't feel able to do one, step back or just message us with your concerns. Our team will adjust what moves we can do that will serve you. This, of course, is always a conversation.
Thank you for that, Beatrice. And I was just kind of like going through the motions and imagining that sand and everything. I had a pretty hectic day, so it was nice for me to kind of like visualize and relax. And hopefully you guys felt the same. And feel free to share with us in our chat if how that felt for you, if you like that particular grounding exercise. So let's talk about how far we've come together. So last session, we introduced you to the ideas of boundaries. What are they? Why do they matter? And we don't set our own boundaries. We've already learned that the world will set them for us. Our work comes in deciding what is best for our lives and well-being, and in communicating those needs with others. So this is what we plan to work on together in this course. So boundaries are all about protecting ourselves in a specific and mindful ways, both by keeping out the bad, but meeting with the good too. So we can learn to take on the world as our strongest and most confident selves. So reviewing the homework. So when we look at the homework that we had given you guys, so we wanted to begin with our thought diaries with you guys, and we wanted to ask everyone to find or buy a notebook for the course. Now, if you haven't gotten a chance to do that, no worries. And if you don't want to buy a notebook, that's okay too. You could use sheets of paper, or you could use your phone, or download a note app on your phone or something to kind of keep in your thoughts there. And you could use Post-it notes as well, or the back of an envelope to write on anything that you feel comfortable using or is within your financial means. Now, being conscious or becoming conscious to our daily thoughts, habits, and feelings, change becomes possible as we're doing this. And we have to know where we're starting to map the route to the finish. So for week 1, we wanted you to identify 3 situations in the past month where you felt you crossed someone's boundaries, or when you think they crossed yours. So considering what these 3 have in common, and do these events usually bother you? So it's a question that you can ask yourself, like how these 3 situations make you feel. And also thinking about another question is like, what can you tolerate?
Yeah, that's right. So moving on, as we were discussing in our last session, healthy boundaries come from identifying and understanding our limits. Do you sometimes feel like you're agreeing to do things you don't want to? Or do you find yourself uncomfortable in social situations? Or do you struggle to separate your work life from your personal life? Or even, do you feel other people tiptoe around you? So all these situations are often the result of having a blurry or unhealthy boundaries in your life. Really, we get it. Still, because this type of thinking and these events are often so common, it might feel overwhelming and even impossible to imagine changing the way you deal with boundaries. We promise you it's not, or we wouldn't be giving these sessions. Both creating and defining boundaries can give us an incredible sense of agency in our lives. Boundaries help us connect with the parts of ourselves we like the most, and to live a more enjoyable life. So before we go any deeper into understanding our own unique boundaries, we need to remember that not all of us will have our boundaries in the same place, for the same people, or in the same situations. Together or as individuals, we will experience closeness and openness in different ways. That's part of being human, your own full self. Still, there are typical influences we consider when we first come to naming or knowing our own lines in the sand. Things that may affect the way we perceive and define our own boundaries.
Yes, exactly. And when we look at some of these, for example, our heritage or our culture, where we live in or where we come from, specific aspects about our personalities, or whether we considered ourselves to be introverted, extroverted, or somewhere in between, and so on. So our life experiences, both positive and negative, it is hard to untangle our boundaries from the past, as boundaries are often constructed or loosened as a protective reaction from past harm, or to avoid past danger. This is because we were trying to avoid what happened to us before, from happening again. And the short term, these boundaries are meant to keep us set. So however, as time moves on, it's up to us to decide if these boundaries continue to serve us or if they're preventing us from exploring, living the life that we prefer.
Yes. Also, our idea of boundaries are affected by our family dynamics and structure. Sorry, my voice is very raspy. Or the life stage we're in, like in age or emotion. So, in a sense, our boundaries are all of these things together. Our experiences, ideals, and values that solidify and communicate our sense of self to the world outside. Our boundaries in their lines, not only in the sand, can be a shape or construction of our person. It's what others get to see of our internal world. This is why we need a relationship with our own set of personal boundaries to be able to establish relationships with others.
Exactly. So, what do these boundaries look like as we begin to overlap and intersect with friends, families, and with ourselves? There are different boundary styles we want to define for you, or we want you to define rather. So, first, there are rigid boundaries where a person tries to avoid intimacy, doesn't tend to ask for help, overprotective of personal information, keeps other people at a distance out of fear of rejection, doesn't have many close relationships, and can seem detached in a romantic relationship. And then there's another individual who, with relaxed boundaries, and that's somebody who has difficulty saying no to other people's requests, or is overly involved in other people's problems and/or lives, overshares personal information, fears rejection if they don't comply with requests, and cares a lot about others' opinions. And then there are healthy boundary individuals where we share personal information in an appropriate way, value our own opinions, don't compromise our values or core beliefs for others, and we can communicate these beliefs. There is flexibility, and we can adapt our boundaries to the moment and mood. So our boundaries don't prevent us or you from building a life you enjoy as you change, grow, and consider yourself in a multitude of beautiful forms and colors. And we can say no. And we are also able to accept no from others.
That's right, that's having healthy boundaries. That is major for us as a team of women, often conditioned to please, and just accept anything someone asks from us. Saying no is a hard thing to do. It's hard to remember and practice. But someone with healthy boundaries should feel comfortable saying no to others when they don't want to do something. And just as importantly, can accept a no in return. Otherwise, a no is a refusal of mutual compassion. It is about their needs over ours, not a communication of emotions, values, time, or our concerns. Boundaries are about respect. We respect others by speaking our boundaries, but also in honoring and hearing the boundaries of others. It's important to remember we don't only need to keep an eye on setting our own boundaries, but we also need to pay attention that we're not overstepping someone else's and noting who is kind to ours.
Exactly. But don't worry, you are not meant to identify fully with any one of these boundaries or boundary styles. We usually use a range of different boundary types depending on the context. And we might tend to have more rigid boundaries at work, relaxed boundaries in friendships, and very healthy boundaries with our family. So boundaries rely highly on setting and culture, and we might feel comfortable to say or act in a certain way with friends, but not at work, or the other way around. It can depend on the group and closeness, and also on the cultural characteristics of where you are and who you are interacting with. We want you to accept what your boundaries can be, that your boundaries can be different, that they represent and reflect different needs and emotions and comforts, and are also involved with the level of trust you have in what space. However, we want you to be able to influence the areas you want to evolve.
Yes. Starting with our rigid boundaries. A lot of us would usually think boundaries issues are connected to people with relaxed boundaries. But as we can see, rigid boundaries can also be a problem. If we are inflexible with our boundaries, our relationships can suffer. We might find it difficult to connect with others and find ourselves feeling lonely or isolated. It is great to feel comfortable to know where your comfort zone is and respect your needs, but keep an eye on how many no's you're giving and if it's really working for you. Does saying no satisfy your long term, or does it simply offer short term relief? Does it take you where you want to be? You have to ask yourself these questions.
Exactly. And these are good questions to reflect on, actually. So, on relaxed boundaries, we want you to think about this, that if you, on the other hand, are finding like you need a little more structure with your relationships, or that your boundaries are too bendy, then you might benefit from learning from some techniques to communicate what you want and need without guilt, although it is normal to feel guilty. So this is one of the main things when considering boundaries. Many of us feel like we would be disappointing others by having our own wants, needs, and or identities, or by restricting our time. And we might lose their trust or interest. And it does not help either if we are told that total self-sacrifice is necessary, or feel we have to burn ourselves out completely in order to shine, or if others believe the same. So setting healthy boundaries, however, usually doesn't result in disappointment or shame. And if it does, then you might want to consider if those relationships are worthy of having. People that love us and care for us truly should be able to understand that we need a bit of space every so often, or that we are allowed to take care of our well-being.
That's right. Now, talking about healthy boundaries, being able to create healthy boundaries in our lives is key to our mental, emotional, and physical health. We deserve to be well and to decide our own time, safety, and self expression. It is a good idea to remember this fact when you are finding it difficult to express your desires. Start by trying this phrase with others. Say, I need to look after myself, and setting this boundary or doing this as a part of that. That can be all someone needs to hear to understand where you stand. Care is a cycle of giving and receiving. There are times someone needs to do a bit more giving when the other is hurt or struggling, but the relationship should always be reciprocal. Boundaries are not disappointments. They give the other person the opportunity to give you what you need in return and be in full intimacy with others. In this part, a part of setting healthy boundaries is acknowledging that as much as you are a planet of your own, you are also part of a universe in which you rely on others for your needs and they rely on you for theirs. This gets tricky when our needs contradict, like if one of your needs is to have a strong bond, but a boundary is not always an emotional support provider. Like one of the boundaries is to not always be an emotional support provider. It can be hard to navigate this. That's why leaving room for flexibility in how you create your boundaries is the best way to thrive. Boundaries shouldn't be rules, they're guidelines to help you live.
Exactly. So let's choose a simple example of this. So you decide you never go to sleep late on Sunday night. And as you have work and responsibilities that mean you have to wake up early on Monday, your cousin who lives in another country is getting ready to start her day and decides to call you just so that you could, just as you are about to get off to bed and go to sleep. Do you pick up the phone? What would you do? It's not a trick question. So a rigid boundary response is to ignore the call or tell them you can't talk because they called at the wrong hour. Now, a relaxed boundary response is to pick up the call and talk for hours because she needs it. A healthy boundary response is to pick up the call and talk for a little bit. You tell her you're wanting to sleep soon, but you hear their voice and catch up on the latest family news and sleep with a full heart. You broke the rule, but don't misspeak what you wanted or lose out on sleep.
Yes. Now let's look at a more complex example. So let's say you had a stressful week, but you realize a friend is in crisis and is turning to you for help. This is a friend who doesn't always ask for help. A rigid boundary response would be to say no. You cannot support them at this time and they look elsewhere for help. A relaxed boundary response would be to support them while also supporting many others who are craving your attention, but are not in need of immediate support. A healthy boundary response is to realize that supporting them at this time is the right thing to do because you care about them and you can manage the emotional burden on this occasion if it's inconvenient. Boundaries help us realize when it is the right time to step up. One thing is for sure, setting boundaries will be stressful to begin with, but the discomfort is only short-lived. Make room for that discomfort. Together, we will process these feelings and make a plan for setting those lights. Again, we can feel selfish or guilty at first when we first start placing these boundaries, but with time, it becomes normal and easier to do, especially knowing the positive impact it will have in our lives. The results will be motivating.
Yes. Now, we said this would be a creative course. So let's start building the foundations for your boundaries to find their place. The first thing we need to do before we start setting or even removing boundaries is to look at our reality. What do we want more of? What do we want less of? And what do we want to stay the same and or are we happy with? So let's do a thorough audit on our boundaries. Once we are clear on our needs and desires, we will be in a better position to be clear about them with ourselves and others. Think about it this way. We love using art examples and visuals. So let's say you want to learn a dance, to dance a new style. The first thing you may do is research and learn about different dance styles. Second, you would be looking at which style you prefer. You feel you need to make some changes in your life to learn this dance. And you may imagine how it might feel when you're actually dancing. So let's begin gathering information from our past boundaries and imagining what we want them to be in the future.
Exactly. And this is why we have homework. So let's start opening the abstract subject of boundaries in our minds slowly. For the next week, we would like you to look at the following questions. Think about them and try to answer them honestly. First one is, do you feel you often do things you don't want to just to please others? Or do you struggle to say no? Or do you feel like people walk over you?
Mm.
And we would like you to encourage you to think about if you feel you have difficulty understanding where other people's boundaries are. Or are you worried people will not want to be close to you if you start setting boundaries?
Mm.
Are you worried that they might talk about you in a mean way? Or does it worry to find yourself lonely if you don't comply with everything you are asked to do? And about family, does your family respect your wishes, decisions, and limits? Do your friends respect your wishes, decisions, and limits? Does your partner respect your wishes, decisions, and limits? Do you feel you are able to take no for an answer without questioning people?
Mm.
Do you feel you stretch yourself at work or volunteering? Well, sometimes guilty about that. Are you worried people will think less of you as a professional or person if you don't work long hours?
Mm.
And do you often find yourself without time to do things you like? Or do you feel guilty or resentful in your relationship with people? So these are just some questions that we would like to consider. We suggest you write these out and at first answer whether it is a yes or a no. Once you've done that for the 15 questions, then look at the ones that struck you the most. Delve deeper. When does this happen? Does a recent example come to mind? Write them down. We'll see about these answers in the chat. And remember, this is an investment in your own journey to recovery. So give yourself the best chance to build resilience. You can do this.
Yes, exactly. And those are some very interesting questions. I know I was kind of like, yeah. And I know
Yeah,
you had
some
one
of them.
too. So I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say in response to your homework here in the chat, and like what answers to those questions. So feel free to share that. Welcome to. We're happy to hear anything that comes up for you. So we want you to remember that this space is as a safe space for you to ask questions or discuss things that may have come up that you could not ask before. And this is a safe space for you to do so. So we want to keep that in mind. And we want to thank everyone for coming to this session and showing up for yourselves, and others who are here because they know they are not alone, and that you remember that we're in this together. So before we close any session and all sessions, we always end with our grounding exercise. So we're going to breathe from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then at the end we'll let out a big sigh. So I will lead us in that. So I'll get started. That was nice. So we want you guys to name one positive thing that you will take away from this session. What's your feel-good phrase? Feel free to say it out loud. You can also send it to us in the chat. It's your mantra, if it is a mantra or just a few words. And what's the one thing that you'll do this week for yourself and just yourself? And think about what your moment of happiness is. And we'll take a look at this in the next session. And so you can also send us these responses in the chat as well. I know for this week, I am going to do some more things outside. I feel like, again, I'm always indoors because I know the current situation. But I live in a beautiful area where there's a mountain, so I can definitely explore that with my son.
Oh, that's so nice. In my case, I think I still can't go out that much because of what's happening right now. But I think try to take more pictures from my balcony this time. Yeah,
that's really nice.
Yeah, to show you guys.
Yeah, I'd love to see. I mean, I always wish I could have gotten photography as a child. When I was in junior high school, they had like a course, but lack of funds, and my parents weren't gonna buy me a really nice camera, so that didn't happen. So I always hear people do photography. Well, that's so nice, and like totally like to see how their photos look, because you get a doorway into how a person sees the world, and I'm always curious about that. So I'd be happy to check those out, features. So how have you all found today's video? We want you guys to let us know any feedback, positive or negative, in our DM, which is the chat box. I'm going to call it chat bot. So this course is about helping you, and we promise that we want to take your personal feedback on board, so that we can continue to improve and mold the course. And we are available at any point to get in touch via personal message for any concerns you may have, questions about the program, to review your homework, or just to chat. And so once again, this session is, I lost my thought. So this session it been a great session, and we look forward to any responses that you have regarding how this session of this course went for you. So feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we are heading out. Take care.
Bye. Bye.